About 6 or 7 years after the successful BMW-made reinvention of the Mini Cooper, Mini was tasked with reinventing it once again. So what we got was the R56 generation Mini Cooper and Cooper S. The car that is right in front of you is a 2008 Mini Cooper S, and it comes from, like I've said, the second generation of the new Mini. And how did they change it over the previous generation of the new Mini, the R53, one of which I actually own? Well, they got rid of the supercharged 1.6 liter inline 4-cylinder engine, and they made it even more unreliable and even more difficult to live with. When people talk about the unreliability and bad build quality of the new Mini, they're not necessarily talking about the first generation, they're actually talking about this generation, the R56, which was renowned for plastic timing chain guides and lots of other mechanical issues that would basically total the car. And the problem was a lot of people who bought this type of car were very unsuspecting. They saw a bright, beautiful, cute little yellow Mini with white stripes and a white roof in the showroom and thought, yeah, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna buy a Toyota Corolla. I think I'm gonna go for something a little bit more expressive, a little bit more stylish, and a little bit more cutesy. And then 140,000 miles in, it's worth $450, and it's got a blown up engine, it's leaking oil and coolant everywhere, and they're wondering where their life went wrong. So on that happy note, let's embark on a review type tour of the R56 Mini Cooper S. Now I know I started this review off quite negatively, but I had to mention all of the woes and the misfortune that a lot of people who bought these R56s probably endured. So now we can move on to the actual review type tour aspects of the video on the R56 Mini. Now, I'm actually quite excited to be standing here next to this car because one, it's a cool color. I love this yellow and the white stripes and the white roof. It's just nice and stylish. Two, it's a nice condition, 70,000 miles. Three, it's got a 6-speed manual transmission, as all Minis should be. Mini, you listening? Mini, the same company who on the 2025 Mini John Cooper Works is not offering a manual transmission anymore. If you're watching this, anybody from Mini's executive corporate offices, give us just one manual. What are you even thinking? Okay, let's continue. Like I briefly touched on earlier, I currently own a 2005 Mini Cooper S John Cooper Works, which comes from the previous generation to this one. Instead of a turbocharger like this one has, my car is a supercharger, and it's still hard to work on, but it's a bit more reliable than this. So part of this video, most of this video actually, is just me internalizing, comparing this R56 to my R53. So that's really the main purpose for me. You all watching this video, likely where you watch my videos on the toilet, can experience the whole tour of the R56 Mini, which is now dirty because it just rained 5 seconds ago, which is awesome. And at the same time, I'm gonna be enjoying myself just comparing it to my own car. So let's move along and talk about practicality, which, judging by the size of this car, isn't great. But before we move on to practicality, actually, I want to touch real quickly on one important aspect of the R56 Mini that I believe it improves on over the R50 and R53 Minis that preceded it. And that is the matter of exterior styling. When you look at this car, I honestly think when it comes down to it, it's a little bit more smartly designed. It's a bit cleaner, more basic with less gimmicks. But at the same time, I would say it looks more sporty, it looks more modern, and it looks a bit more masculine. But when it comes to design cues that differentiate the Cooper S hatchback from the regular non-turbo Cooper hatchback, well, you have the Cooper S badge on the rear tailgate here, as you'd expect. You also have a more aggressive, sporty rear bumper with this huge plastic grille element right here and a center-mounted exhaust, which has been a hallmark of the Cooper S all the way up until the 2025 model year, where they changed it to be exactly the same. And that goes for the front end as well, where you have a hood scoop that was a hallmark until now. And it was functional on the R53, but not on the R56. And when it comes to other things, on the back, you have this lovely rear spoiler right here, which has 3 prongs on the end of it, looks nice and sporty, definitely different from the regular Cooper and its weenie size spoiler. And then up front, you have a bit of a more aggressive and sporty front bumper. But then again, just looking at this car, I think the R56 was a much better, much cleaner looking design compared to the R53. It's just a shame that it didn't have a supercharger, and even more of a shame that it was an unreliable nightmare. Also, one thing when it comes to the R56 is that I have a nostalgic love for the R56 generation minis, and here's why. When I was a little kid, my dad, for some unknown reason, had a sales brochure for the 2007 Mini Cooper and Mini Cooper S hatchback. I have no clue why. He's not a Mini guy. He has never owned a Mini, and I don't think he ever will. But for some reason, he had this sales brochure lying around, and it was of the R56 Mini the year before this one came out. And I spent many hours as a kid leafing through that sales brochure and loving the style of the Minis, loving the customization, and loving just all of the interesting little touches like the big speedometer that we'll look at in a minute. And if it wasn't for this car and that sales brochure, I wouldn't have gotten into the Mini brand, and I wouldn't have bought my own Mini. So there's a whole nostalgic personal element with this car for me. And of course now I own my own copy of that sales brochure, as well as bunches of other sales brochures. So, but it all started for me and the Mini brand with this car and that sales brochure. So the tailgate has decided, oh, there we go. Never mind. Possible electrical issues, unreliability, that's what you'd expect. You open this tailgate and you can see a tiny cargo area. It does have quite a wide and tall opening, as you can see, but you look inside and it's very small in here owing to the size of this car, as you'd probably expect. If you need a bit more room though, you can pop both back seats down. It's a 50-50 split, and because this car is so small, it's really easy to reach the latches right there. But with the rear seats in place, you have a tiny basic cargo area, enough for probably one suitcase. Because if you own a car like this, a Mini, you're not gonna have any friends that are gonna wanna go with you on a weekend getaway. I'm just kidding. I'm a Mini owner myself, and I've got so many friends that I'm far too busy to do something like sit in a parking lot alone next to a yellow Mini Cooper and talk about it. Yeah, so one thing actually that I have to talk about, after we've looked at the minuscule cargo area, you would expect a minuscule tiny rear seat, and that's exactly what this car has. And I've stuffed myself in the back of a two-door Mini on this channel before, and I know that I don't fit. I'm 6'3", I'm way too tall, and it is going to be very uncomfortable and extremely unpleasant for me if I do that. And you all want me to, don't you? Of course you do. Okay, well, let's do it then. All right, so this driver's seat right here, as you'd expect, is in my seating position, and I am 6'3", and the car is making an annoying bonging noise. So let's get this over with. All right, there's a latch right here on the backrest of the seat. You just fold it forward and then push it forward just like that, and you still don't have enough room to fit yourself back here. So let's just put one knee in, pivot. Oh my God. That was the seat, not me. Okay. All right. Well, one thing I do like is that there's a whole checkered flag plastic styling element on the door panel right here. And it actually continues onto the B-pillar, which most cars, most luxury cars, even today, don't have that. On the B-pillar, it's always some gross gray plastic and there's no continuity in the interior. I actually like how this continues onto here. That's a nice little feature right there. Yeah, I know I'm stalling. All right, let's do it. Yep, okay. So the seat hasn't even latched into place yet, and it's already crushing my knees. I'm sure this won't cause any problems when we're out on the road doing 75 miles per hour on our way to what's something that Mini people do. Drink tea party, I don't know. Yeah, when you're stuffed back here and this is the only way you can get yourself comfortable, you should probably opt for a Countryman. So I'm gonna move the seat back again, and we'll talk about rear seat comfort for smaller people, and even then it's not that great. I gotta put these headrests up, and the seat is quite upright, meaning you're sitting very vertical, which means you'll probably get quite stiff on long journeys very quickly. But you do have a couple comfort elements right here. You have a speaker right next to you, and you have a tiny little storage tray, but I guarantee that has never been used, and this speaker has never been enjoyed by anybody back here unless the previous owner of this car had friends with no legs. Otherwise, you're not going to be fitting anybody back here. Your dog will fit, your cat will fit, but nobody else. So let's move on to the part of this car that actually matters. And that is the front seat of the R56 Mini Cooper S, which is where 100% of the human beings that have ever been in this car have sat. And as soon as we're up here, I have to mention, it is a little bit more basic than it is in the modern Mini. You don't have a modern infotainment system, and you don't have modern ambient lighting or anything like that, but what you have is a bit more personality, if you ask me. Let's start with my favorite part of this interior, the main, most prominent feature of the interior of this car, and that is the massive central speedometer right here, which I absolutely love. When it comes to minis and gimmicks and their features and style, the most important thing about the interior is this huge central speedometer. It's outrageously sized, it's stupidly unpractical, and it's never used, because when you have a big speedometer right here in the center, there's always a digital speed readout on the tachometer over right in front of the driver. So nobody driving this car will actually pay attention to this big speedometer right here. But I just love it. It's so quirky and it's so distinctive. And when it comes to everything in this interior, this has always been my favorite part of it by far. But there are some other fun little touches in this car, moving down to the climate controls, which are set up in the shape of the Mini logo. It's pretty clear that they started with this Mini shape and they thought, all right, let's make the climate controls a Mini shape. So they stuck the Mini logo right on there, and then they thought, okay, now what? This climate control setup right here, yes, it's nice looking, but it is just outrageously stupid and not that easy to use. You get used to it, but it's just not an effective climate control system. But then down from that, you have toggle switches, as you'd expect for a Mini, for your power windows, your window locks, and your fog lights. You also have more toggle switches up here to control your sunroof, your map lights, and your ambient lighting in this car, which you can change between a couple different colors, which is a nice little comfort feature in this car. But the biggest, most important differentiator from this 2008 Mini Cooper S to the 2025 version is this weird stick right here with this strange pattern on top, and the fact that there is an extra pedal over in the driver's footwell. What does that pedal do? What does this shifter do? It makes you smile. Anybody? So yes, this car is equipped with the desirable 6-speed manual transmission, which was offered in the Mini Cooper all the way up until the 2024 model year. So when this car came out, the manual had quite a long ways to stay, and it was offered in every Mini back in the day, because Mini back then was differentiating itself from other car makers by focusing on being an enthusiast-friendly brand, as well as something that valued style and gimmicks and quirks at the same time. It was great, it was balanced. They were going after the enthusiast crowd, as well as going after the urban commuter styly crowd, and everyone is happy. It all worked out until these cars started blowing engines, but forget about that. But now they're committing fully to the latter. The commuter who wants something a little bit more stylish and quirky is getting exactly what they want with the current Mini, but the enthusiasts have largely left the brand because they're hard to work on, they're unreliable, but mostly the fact that they've just forgotten about the enthusiasts. So this car comes from back in the time when Mini was still an enthusiast car, which means when we get this car out on the road in a second, provided the engine doesn't explode into a million pieces, we'll have a pretty good time together. And one other thing is that, did you know there's a storage area right here? Well, now you do. You're welcome. Okay, with that, let's move on and talk about the Claymore that's lying underneath the hood. Okay, let's see if they mounted the hood latch on the correct side of the car this time. Yes, they did. That is one other improvement of the R56 compared to the R53, but I would argue that when the hood opens, which will happen, well, I don't know, quite often if you buy one of these, all of the problems and downsides make themselves apparent compared to the R53. Now, if I know my Minis, it'll be over here. It's not over here, I don't know my Minis. They changed it on me. You know, this is my favorite thing to do on this channel, is search for hood latches on cars. We can't just put it in the same spot for everybody. There we go, found it. Oh Great, lovely. As you can tell by the way these hood struts are not able to hold the hood up, this hood has spent quite a lot of time open, that's for sure. So you open the hood and you can see the N14 4-cylinder, which is known to explode at any moment if you look at it funny, and that's what tainted the reputation of the modern Mini brand, was this engine and its unreliability. I'll put a list of anything that I haven't mentioned when it comes to unreliability on the screen right now. It would explode, leaving you on the side of the road wishing that you had, in fact, bought the white Corolla with cloth seats. But right now, at least, this engine is working and developing 173 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque, which is a bit of an improvement over the R53, which I believe started around 163 with the supercharger. But the main difference is the fact that this engine provides a turbocharger for boost rather than the supercharger. Also, this engine was made by the French Peugeot, which means that the R56 Generation Mini and the Ineos Grenadier are the two cars ever to exist that had German, French, and British roots. So with that, let's get this car out on the road and see how it drives, praying it doesn't explode. If you're watching this at home, please keep your fingers crossed for me. If it explodes, I'll be coming for you, Steven. You watching? You paying attention, Steven? Yeah, all right, let's hear a couple revs and take this thing out for a drive and see what it's like. I've been waiting to do a video with an R56, and I wanted to wait until one was available that was a little bit lower miles, so there is less risk of it exploding when I drive it. Okay, apparently the front end is a bit lower than the R53. One that had less risk of exploding when I drive it, and one with a manual transmission. This manual transmission, every time I push in the clutch, it's making an air hissing noise, which is probably not a good sign. So when it comes to things comparing this to my R53 that I'm noticing right off the bat, well, the steering is quite a bit lighter, and to that end, it feels noticeably more vague. I'll say the ride is a little bit softer, but it's still quite harsh of a ride in here. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but that's because it's got that famed handling that everybody knows that Mini markets heavily. And instead of a lovely supercharger whine, you just get a nice satisfying turbo surge in each gear instead. So steering isn't as good, ride is a little bit better, the sound is worse, but it has a little bit more power than the regular R53s did. And it's nice to be rowing my own gears in a Mini Cooper, which is something that everybody should be able to do, but BMW decided that it hates us, so it took that privilege away for 2025, which is unfortunate. But honestly, you can find these R56 generation Minis for pennies these days, and there's a very good reason for that, because it's not something that you should buy your teenage daughter, or you should buy at all if you're not mechanically inclined or have a good Mini mechanic on speed dial. It's something that you have to own if you can handle the responsibility of it. So let's get on our favorite bit of road here. Pray it doesn't explode. Flooring it. Yeah, no, it doesn't quite do it for me. It really doesn't, because when I open it up in my R53, I know I keep coming back to that, but this was directly following the R53. Whenever I floor it in that car, it just makes this amazing whine from the supercharger up front. It torque steers like crazy and never fails to put a massive smile on my face. Now this car, not to say this is bad to drive, it still is quite fun because it's engaging, it's easily something I can toss into turns like this, and it's got a decent amount of power, and the noise honestly isn't that bad. It's just when you open with your newly redesigned take on an iconic hatchback, and you make the hot version and give it a supercharger and a 6-speed manual, you're just setting yourself up for failure when it comes to the future generations, because there's no way you're ever going to be able to follow up on that. Minis never are supposed to be normal, are they? And this one feels a little bit too normal. It's got a manual, which is great. I love the engagement of this manual. This engine, while I'm afraid of it dearly, it's a pretty satisfying engine. It's very smooth, and it's honestly something I would say is a little bit easier to daily drive because the engine feels a little bit smoother. The gearbox also is a little bit softer and a little bit easier to use. So is the clutch. The ride is a lot softer. The steering is softer. This car is obviously, if I were to daily it without the context of the unreliability adding itself into the equation, I'd definitely choose the R56 over the R53. From new with a warranty, this is a better daily driver car than the R53. But when it comes to making you smile and laugh, which I would argue is the most important thing by far in the little two-door Mini Cooper hatchback, when it comes to fun and smiles and value and literally everything that I think matters, R53 all the way. I am super, super pleased with my decision to not get an R56. Now, that could change if a club van decided to make itself available to me. I would probably sell one of my kidneys for one of those, but there's only 50 of them. I didn't want to talk about the R56 being noticeably less enjoyable to drive than the R53, but it really is. So with that, I'm gonna end that video there. I want everybody to have a fantastic day. Like, subscribe, do all the normal YouTube stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.